my pants?
It's not gonna fit. My arms aren't that broad. It's okay. I'll put it
Oh,
on my
no,
legs.
I gotta have the pants.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
This isn't my official meeting, but I would like to call to order this workshop meeting with Renee Narlock, and I would like to introduce her and call her up. Tom, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor James.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harris. Here. Commissioner Brandemart.
Here.
Commissioner Grace.
Here.
Commissioner Salvino.
Here.
City Attorney Ansbro.
Here, and
Thank
happy
you.
birthday for the real happy birthday.
Thank you. You're welcome to proceed.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good
Good to
afternoon.
see you again. I'm Renee Norlock with Norlock and Associates. And as you know, I have been tasked with recruiting candidates for the city manager position. And I am here to talk with you today about the pool of candidates, what we've learned about them, and our recommendations moving forward. We have a tentative date of the 25th of June, that's a Monday, to conduct interviews here at City Hall with candidates, with whoever we move forward today. And I think you've been notified of that date, and I think that gives us enough time in order to coordinate the on-site interviews. Just to give you an overview of the pool and of where we are and how we got there, we had about probably 35 applications total, a good mix of folks, some local people, some people long distance, some people who have been in city management before, some people who have not. And we went through and pulled out about a dozen or so folks that we did preliminary interviews with. From that process, we are here today to recommend 5 candidates for interview, and I am going to talk in detail with you about those particular individuals, why they made the cut, what we saw there that we thought was important to you and to the city of Dania Beach, as well as maybe why some folks didn't make the cut. I am just simply making recommendations to you today. You can take those, we can tweak those, you can reject those, I can start all over. I certainly don't think there's any reason to do that. I think we have some very good candidates here. But just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what I was mindful of whenever I did recruit candidates and even evaluated candidates. I am very aware of where Dania Beach is on this, I'll call it a cusp or a wave of some great things happening in the city. And I understand that that takes some heavy lifting. It takes a team member to work with you to make those things happen, but also someone who understands that. And there were a variety of things that were mentioned by you in our meetings. Management style, we talked about that. We talked about the development, but I think equally as important, you mentioned how you didn't want to focus just on the development part of the community, that there's community members and there's other needs in the community that are as important to you. Affordable housing comes to mind. So when I looked at candidates, I really looked at whether or not they had, an understanding of how a commission and a manager work well together, their management style in general. Are they mindful of the workforce? Do they know how to mentor? Do they know how to pull people along that have potential for succession planning? Because it's a very important key to your development as a city, to grow people from within. Do they understand budgets? Do they understand TIFs? Do they understand CRAs? Do they understand development, economic development, redevelopment, historic development, redevelopment? You know, where exactly, what information or what experience do they bring to the table? So what we have is, as I mentioned, we have 5 candidates I'd like to talk with you about today. And I'm just going to go alphabetically and kind of hit the highlights of these 5 candidates. And then I do have access, if there's anybody else that you want to talk about, all the other candidates are listed in the back of the book. We can certainly look at anybody that's in there, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. So our first candidate is Howard Brown. Mr. Brown is currently the city manager of Bell, California, and he's actually managed in several different states, started out in code enforcement and neighborhood improvement. I don't know if you are familiar with the city of Bell, but they did make the news a few years back, and he went in after that. He was the person to come in and clean that up. For those of you that are not familiar with what I'm talking about, and again, I'm just paraphrasing here, but it seems like they had officials, either the city manager and/or elected officials, that were giving themselves raises up to the tune of about $800,000 salaries. And again, that started a whole different approach across the country of limiting that. I think that was probably around the time the governor of the state of Florida limited severance here also. But that said, he came in behind all of that. So it was a bit of a cleanup, but it was also a lot of other problems going on there, financial problems, hardships. They were in big trouble. So he's done quite a bit of fixing as we say in the South, in the last couple of years there, 2 or 3 years. His interest in coming back here is he's getting married in December. His wife is a surgeon in this area. And so he's coming back to Florida. I think he's getting married December 1st. So he's looking to come back to this area, certainly wants to be a city manager. And he recognizes kind of where we are salary-wise. And also, in talking with him, he had done his homework, and he's checked out the city and what you have certainly to offer. Let me see if there was anything else off the top of my head I wanted to mention to you. He is fluent in Spanish. He talked about how he created the first CRA in Escambia County, which is functioning at about $11 million a year now. So he's very knowledgeable in CRAs, understands structures. Again, I'm not sure if you're familiar with California, that actually abolished their redevelopment authorities a few years back. So he understands what happens when the CRA goes away also, and the implications of that. I asked candidates if there was anything in their background that we should be concerned about that would come up in a background check or anything like that, and there was nothing. I'm going to jump right to the next candidate, if that's okay with everyone.
Before you do that, do we have the option to jump, because I might lose my train of thought later
Sure.
on. So
Sure.
if it's okay if I can interject for a few minutes.
If you all want to turn your things on, if you have questions, if you buzz it,
Oh, sorry.
or we can just blurt it out. It's up to you all.
No, I don't want to blurt it out. Okay. Oh, I'm good? Okay. I noticed that this gentleman, reported salary is $200,000. I also looked at his portfolio, and he was with the city of Lauderdale Lakes 2002. Lauderdale Lakes had a lot of problems in the red with their budgets, improprieties with elected officials and department heads. So I wanted to know whether he was, well, they're still in financial trouble right now, but what role did he play in that? Also, the city of Albany, Georgia, which is right outside of my hometown, which has a small population that has not developed a lot of growth in that area. What did he do to try and turn that around, because it's still on the downside? And then I looked at him being an assistant city manager to Oakland Park. Of course, Oakland Park, is Opelika, I'm sorry.
Opelika,
Oakland
yes.
Park. Opelika is still, and this was 2010 to 2014, and you know that they're in complete turmoil. And I don't think they're going to be able to straighten it out until they revamp that whole commission and the city attorney and the city manager. So did he share any of these with you?
He did.
Okay.
He talked about, actually, when he went to Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma, that was his first city manager role, and he went there with the purpose in mind of managing as a city manager for the first time. He does go into troubled organizations, just like Bell, California, and he has that ability to influence and to improve them along the way. And I would say I looked more to his city management experience when he actually went to Oklahoma, because that was the first full city,
That was
full service.
2014, 2016. Okay.
And then even in Bell, going into Bell. So those were the ones that I feel like he carried the most weight there, and he was the most effective there. He has served, I'm familiar with Albany, Sharon Subadan, the manager there, came from Hillsborough County and is a personal friend of mine, and I'm familiar with that city and the challenges there, as well as some of the other ones that you mentioned. So I think those are very good points.
Commissioner Salvino?
Yes, thank you. I did notice that Commissioner Grace had mentioned in the bottom about City of Lardo Lakes. That was just for code enforcement. There really wasn't a management position there. But as I go up the list, and you talk about the city manager's position, one thing that I always question is when someone works 2 years and they either quit or they get fired.
That's what I was
And
gonna ask.
2014 to 2016, he was in Oklahoma. Then he left that job, and I can see the progression that he did going up from 210 to 214 as a acting city manager and getting an opportunity to become a city manager. Just curious, for a city manager to fall into a job for 2 years and then fall out, they're not even getting their feet wet. That puts a question mark on me.
That is a good point. I look at that also. If I see progression, if they're going to every 2 years and I see a progression there, I don't have a concern about it. In this case, he was heavily recruited and they gave him a pretty darn good package to go into Bell, California.
So in other words, show me the money, huh?
Well, sometimes
No
it comes
loyalty.
down to that. But at $800,000 he got there, that's for certain. But again, even his change now, I look at it and I say, okay, you've been there 2 years, you're looking to come here. There's sometimes an explanation such as the fact that his fiance is here and they've made a decision that he's coming back here versus her going out there with her
That
practice.
still flags the situation to me because that means he's going to chase somebody around. If she gets transferred to Orlando next, then what? Okay.
I think she has
that's all the questions I have.
a very established practice. From what I understand, it's St. Mary's Hospital. Is that?
Thank you.
I don't even know where that is.
I have a question.
Sure.
I too looked at all of the inconsistencies, so where he's been. He went to Florida, Georgia, Florida, Oklahoma, then California, and, I don't see much loyalty to, I see him chasing money. My question is, was he terminated from these positions, or did he
No.
leave all of them?
No, he left them.
He left all
Yes.
of the positions.
Pretty much
Okay.
until
And those are very good questions. All of those are very good questions. Same questions I had before I talked to him. And I had to get a feel on whether or not I felt he was, I guess what I'm saying is I know he's coming back to this area. There's no doubt about that. I think he is a good manager, and I think it would be worth our while to bring him to the table, to ask him any of these questions that you have, and get a sense of his commitment to being here, and if he's the right fit for Dania Beach.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, because we are a smaller city in compared to surrounding cities, and I understand he want to come back here, but in 2 years, another city that has a bigger budget than us can offer him, something that is 500, more money. And he has shown that he is going to do what's best for his family. He's loyal to his family, just like a lot of people are, but a lot of us, we really put the city first.
Sure.
And employees here really put the city first. And so whoever it is, I really want to make sure they are loyal to this city first and foremost, and not just running after a dollar, because we might go through a recession. We might, go through bad times, but we need someone that is going to stick with us through the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mayor, excuse me, my concerns exactly, and so what I stepped back and looked at is there enough happening in Dania Beach to keep him engaged? And I'm just telling you where you are as a city. This is what city managers love to do. They love when you're in this growth mode and when your budget is, and I am good with that. Because first of all, living in California is extremely expensive. It's been difficult in the past years to even recruit anybody out of California, so I don't think that's lost on him. The other thing is really whether or not, he is an ICMA, he's a certified manager, ICMA certified manager. That's a different level of training for managers too. So I think he brings some expertise to the table here. And so I look at it like, well, what's going to keep him here? What's going to be, what are you going to be doing that's going to be interesting to him? He's either going to feel like this is right, and because whoever comes has to dig in and stay with you. They can't come for 2 years. So if it's something that's keeping them engaged and keeping them busy and keeping them, I'll call it having city manager fun, if you will, because there's some jobs that are just very tedious, they're monotonous, they're whatever. This job is not that. So I do feel like when he comes and gets a look at you and make sure that you're a good, sound group, which you are, because he's going to be looking at you too. And then once he sees the opportunities that lie before you, I think it's going to be an interesting enough opportunity for him to make a career move and to stay with you.
ICMA, is that a continuing education requirement?
It is,
Okay, so there's an ICMA organization that he would attend
yes.
yearly,
Yes.
locally, nationally?
ICMA is the International City County Manager Association, very active association. If you're not connected with that as a city or individual, do so by all means. This certification requires years of it's sort of like, you have to have years of experience, you have to have certain educational requirements, you have to have worked in certain capacities to get that certification. And it doesn't, I never rule a candidate in or out on having that, but if they have it, I always make sure to make you aware of that, because that is a big deal in the industry, to have that certification. They put in a lot of time and a lot of their resources to get it over the years, but it's not like you can pay your way in. You have to do the time in city management, a certain amount of time and a certain amount of responsibilities to even qualify for that. I'm going to move on to Mr. Craig Clay. He is currently Assistant City Manager of Miami Gardens. Prior to that, he worked for Miami-Dade Public Housing and Community Development Agency in various capacities. You'll notice that Mr. Clay's background is finance. He served as finance director in a couple of roles, and then even early in his career, he worked with KPMG Consulting, which is a government solutions consulting firm. They're very well known in the industry. He did some financial accounting systems. He's IT savvy, which I think is important to point out in potential candidates. In his current role in Miami Gardens, there are 2 assistant city managers, and as I understand it, the other one has a couple of departments, and the majority of the departments are in Mr. Clay's portfolio. I have met him before in person, very professional, presents very well. I think he's very well trained to step into a city manager role. I think your city is probably a good size for him. I think that they're doing some interesting things, and he's been involved in those things in Miami Gardens. And I think in his resume, he indicates currently he has community development, finance, procurement, parks and rec development services, and capital improvements that report to him. That manager does rotate those departments over time. And I feel like he's ready to step into the role. As I mentioned, he interviewed very well with me. I'm going to look in my notes here and see if there's anything else I can share with you. His current salary is around $150,000. When he talked about working for the Housing Authority, he was basically tapped to go in there because there were some major things that needed to be cleaned up there. It was in a mess. They had a Hope 6 project that had gone off the rails, and it's a very costly project. They hadn't had audits done in a couple of years, and he had to come in and kind of rebuild and back into everything there. Just looking here to see if there's anything else that stands out. I found him to be very professional, very decisive. I did talk to him about what he was looking to do short and long-term career-wise. Ultimately, he wants to be a city manager. It's been a goal of his for several years now. I do think he's the kind of person that would come and stay and stick with you. He offered up some information on his age and how many years he would continue to work. I won't say that publicly, but he would be, wherever he goes, he would be there for a while. He does have some familiarity with CRAs and understood kind of where your CRA is and and what might need to be looked at in regard to that. He did watch your commission meetings, and and seemed in the city. And I said, well, that is not a question I can answer for you. So I don't know what he picked up on in what meeting or what have you, but he's very strategic in his approach. You know, he would be the kind of manager that would come in and just sort of, you know, assess the organization and establish a strategy for doing upgrades wherever that's needed. I think he's ready for the role, and I think he would do a very good job for you.
Commissioner Grace, you have a question?
Yes, I had the opportunity to take a good look at all of the candidates, but this one kind of stood out a little bit. Because he seemed to have touched bases on all of the tiers that we need. Somebody that is computer savvy, worked with a Parks and Recreation Department, which, you know, we have a lot of that going on in the city of Dania Beach. Community development, as you spoke about the housing. He's from the University of Florida State University.
I'm not sure if Renee recruited people that went to FSU, because the first two candidates went to FSU.
Now
I'm very
just stop. It's your birthday, okay? Okay, just stop. The salary seems to be basically a little bit in line of what we're looking for. Might have to escalate it a little bit, but I didn't see anything in here, and the most important thing that I'm thinking about right now is that we need matching funds for the city of Dania Beach, and has he had any experience with the grant writing? Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that's going to be a major component is what we're looking for, and a person to elevate our different departments to higher levels.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good point. He has had that experience, and while he's well-rounded as far as a manager, his background is finance, and you never really get too far away from that as you grow in your career. And he understands how to look for additional revenue sources, how to be aggressive with regard to grants and other things. He even talked about TIFs and how, you know, the importance of getting those set up and the value of that. So yes, ma'am, he has.
Vice Mayor?
What says in here where he crafted a revenue enhancement plan to generate over $1 million in untapped and stagnant revenue. Do you know how he was able to tap into that?
I do not have
Don't tell us your
specifics
secrets.
on that, but that's a really good question to pose and how that happened. He talked a little bit about it, but not in a lot of detail. And what I was looking for was, did he know how to find money? And
That's
he
what we're
has a
looking
history of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
because with his ability and his experience in finance, because I know from, you know, other cities and things that we've talked about before, the structuring a P3, which seems
Yes.
to be the way to go.
Yes.
County, state, and nationwide for projects that would accelerate our growth in the city and structure that with, you know, as little money as possible from the city, but bring in the
Yes.
partners who share the
Yes.
vision.
Okay, thank you.
Year at the procurement management, and then went over to Parks and Recreation. I want to make sure that was a step higher.
Yes, Mayor. As a matter of fact, you'll find several of our candidates are called on when there's a problem in a particular department, whether they've had experience in that particular field or not.
Okay.
They have the leadership skills and abilities to go in and assess what's really going on and how to course correct that. And that was the case in that regard.
Okay, and then so I don't have to ask the same question for all of the candidates. Would you make us aware of at any time they were terminated from a job?
Sure.
Versus
I will be
just
glad
leaving?
to.
Thank you.
He is a college basketball official, too.
Oh, what?
a college basketball
Like a referee?
official.
Oh, wow. She's like still laughing. I don't understand.
All the candidates were also inquiring about what the change is going to look like in November with elections and how it might, how might that affect, because they want to make sure they're coming into a stable environment, which I assured them they were. But that was some of the questions that I've gotten from candidates also. Mr. Jeffrey Eder, I've not worked with him before. He is currently the city administrator in East Peoria, Illinois. If you'll notice his development over the year, Redevelopment Authority grant writer, which is important, and then worked in the Greater Champaign-Urbana Economic Partnership for a few years as Director of Economic Development, and then Director of Business Development. So what I liked about him was when he did kind of find his stride, if you will. I think those were all career development positions. And when he found his stride in 2000, he was there with the Village of Franklin Park, Illinois for 12 years. Each of those are promotions with the organization. And then he got an opportunity to be Assistant City Manager of Rock Island. So that was a promotional opportunity also. Even in that role, he had community and economic development. And then he got his first city administrator role in 2016. When he took this job in East Peoria, he knew that this was a form of government where it's called a strong commission form of government, where, if I can explain this correctly, each commissioner has departments that it oversees. So it's not the structure that you have here. He went into that thinking that he said he had extensive conversations with the commissioners about how all that would play out. And he's just, at this point, kind of found it difficult to do what he does, which is city management in that environment. So he wants to be in a different form of government at this point is what he's looking at. He's at 125,000 currently. I think if there's anything I can kind of emphasize about him, he does report to City Commission there. There's 200 employees. It's a full service. They have water, sewer, public works, streets, community development, finance. It's challenging there. This is one of the communities where they have to look for money on a regular basis. I think he's done well there. He said he's going to be working another 15 years or so wherever he goes. He does have a freshman in high school. So when he makes a move, he wants to be somewhere long enough for that child to get through high school. So he comes with the intent of staying somewhere for a while. He has talked with his family and made sure that they were in line with what he wanted to do. As far as anything in his background, there was he had a home that took a 50% dive in value in Franklin Park when he was there. And so he had to make some adjustments financially in that regard, but that was 7-8 years ago. And part of our background check includes a credit check, but we have to be very careful because you can't rule somebody in or out on a credit check. It's against the law to do that. But if somebody's running your city, we like to look and just see if there's anything that's there that we need to know about and we can inform you about. But outside of that, I don't think there was anything else. He did say when he was with, I believe, Rock Island, there was a big historic preservation move there. And there was a lot of demolition that had to be done of old historic buildings. And that got pretty heated at some point, as you can imagine. So outside of that, I think I liked his energy level. I think what kind of struck me was his background in community development and redevelopment. I know that we're not looking for a community development director, but I just feel like your next city manager needs to be strong and have an understanding of development and redevelopment because that's where you are. as well as finance and budget, because those two go hand in hand. You can't get away from that. So I think that was why I've never worked with him before. He also talked about his current position, just to kind of share with you a little bit of challenges. I think a good manager knows when to leave. I think they see the writing on the wall, and they just know ahead of time. And there's a gracious way to do it, and there's a bad way to do it. But he did mention that there were a couple of people in his organization that were caught stealing, and he terminated them only for his commission to reinstate both of them. So it's just a challenging environment to manage in. So I think that's some of his motivation for making a change there.
Commissioner Grace?
Yeah, I noticed that he was a director of Economic and Development Corporation. That really hits home base with me because as we're doing a lot of the transitions here, we probably will be developing as much of the properties that we have in the city of Dania Beach to a higher level. He has been the director of Rock Island since 2012 to 2016. But what really caught my eye at this person, it says, an early retirement program leads to the significant amount of staff
Reduction.
turnover, particularly in the Public Works Department. This allows for reorganization within Public Works, creating effectiveness and getting the different divisions to work more closely together. Did he talk a little bit about that and what?
He did. He talked about the challenges financially of the city, and that was one of the incentives that they offered, which is not unusual for cities to do that. And it's done for a couple of reasons. It's not just done when you're financially stretched. It's just done if you feel like your organization has gotten a bit heavy over the years and can run a little leaner. Because if you're doing process improvements and things like that, there should be a direct correlation to the workforce and to how things are done differently. And a lot of that's taken care of through attrition on a regular basis. But I had one candidate recently, it wasn't for this position, but her company, her city, was offering 15 years added service to anyone and 15 years added to their age, because it's a formula of age and service. But they were going all out to do, a pretty broad sweep for people who are eligible to retire at that point, and she was, and good for her, So I think it's kind of a tool, if you will, that some cities have used in the past to two things. To recognize savings monetarily overall in the budget, but also to lean, to cause the organization to become leaner.
Really kind of projected a red flag for me because I remember what Hollywood went through with the early retirement, and of course they almost bankrupt that complete city by giving out the early retirements. So I just want us to be cautious when we're doing stuff like this, that we don't get into a bind like that. With Bell South, AT&T, when I retired, it was the number of years that you work with them. If I worked 30 years plus my age, which reached, I think it was like 80, a total of 80. So when you talk about 15 and 15, that,
Right.
red flag, red flag,
Right.
red
Right.
flag.
And that wasn't his organization. That was someone
Okay.
else that I was told. It was not his.
Okay.
It wasn't their program.
Okay.
But that's a really good point. Hollywood is still recovering,
Yes, I know.
to this day. So,
Commissioner Salvino?
Yes, thank you. Out of the three candidates that you brought up already, one of the things I haven't heard anything is about negotiating skills. Has any of those been mentioned at all?
yes, with all three of the candidates.
Okay.
That was an important point for me in evaluating candidates, and it especially represented the organization at union negotiations, but also, whether it's negotiating with for economic deals or.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a question, because I know that we do with like our BSO and
Right.
federal employees and stuff like that. I just want to
Yes.
make sure that someone has the ability in there.
Yes.
Because I think so far, all three of the candidates have pretty similar situations, maybe a little unique in their own little ways.
Right.
Some of the things I'm looking at as we go along, on the last two, they progressively have got they bettered themselves along the way. And it's not like they're bounced around like on the first one did. So, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
The size of the cities of East Peoria and Rock Island, do you know about the population or the demographics or
I do, I
location?
believe. Hold on just a second.
East Peoria.
Well, I said I do. Hold on just a
East
second.
Peoria is 23,000.
Yes.
How many?
23,000. City of Rock Island.
And that is in
And the City of Rock Island is 38,000.
Peoria, Rock Island actually had a 20,000 population, but 100,000 daily population. Was in a bigger metro area. And I believe that's the same case with East Peoria. I believe it has a larger day population than what their, the resident population is.
Okay. My question is, I see that I want to know, it doesn't seem like you've had much experience in Florida of any sort or kind. So what type of South Florida conditions, coastal conditions, and communities do these applicants have experience with? Because this person, it says Peru, Miami. I'm not sure if that's even in Miami or if that's in, I
Two
don't.
different places?
Yeah, I don't know where it's located. It could be just saying Miami.
Sure.
It could be, Ohio, Miami, but
Right.
I know they've been in Indiana and in Illinois, and the challenges that we face here are drastically different.
That's true, Mayor. What I look for in candidates is that they've been able to acclimate to a community. If they've only been in the same community their entire career, if they've only been in the same community their entire career, then that question becomes bigger to me of can they acclimate anywhere else, whether it's South Florida or anywhere. But if I've seen movement, then I think with that brings experience, brings diversity of experience. But that is a question, again, in
Yeah,
meeting
because we have
candidates.
hurricanes out here, and it's a specific
right.
type of experience that you need to understand when we're
Right.
talking about
Yes.
cleanup efforts, when we're
Right.
talking about what's happening right now at our beaches, the conversation that we had last night. These are very important decisions that
Yes.
we will be making
Yes.
as far as how we're going to restore our beaches. If I don't even know if there are beaches up there or wherever this person is, and I just want to make sure that they have the knowledge and the understanding to grasp sea level rise, drainage issues, things about hurricane preparedness, our water supply. It really was a shock when the other candidate said something about our water supply,
Yes.
because little beknownst to us, this is an issue that we are facing, and it's a major issue that we are going to be facing in the years to come. So that was pretty impressive, but I'm not against candidates that are outside the state of Florida, but I really want to make sure that they can understand all of the issues that they are going to be stepping into, because it's a difference in just going to another class. But going to another country, from going from country to country, myself traveling, it is completely different, and it could be a culture shock, and
Yes.
it can be a transition in a negative way for us if this candidate comes and they have no knowledge of these things.
I think that's a very good point, Mayor.
Commissioner Brandemeier?
I've been listening, and it's funny that they brought up exactly what I was going to talk about. When we go to the League of Cities, when they took the vote on replenishing the beaches, the reason why it was put off for so long was because the delegates that were on person for trailer parks and homes, I understand where this one's coming from, and also the amount of people, because those 100,000 don't live there. Their population is far more or less. They have no knowledge of water because there ain't no water there. You understand what I'm
Yes.
saying to you? So I got a bitter taste in my mouth from the Florida League of Cities, because the ones that ruled that we don't get any beach nourishment to 20 are all of the parts that don't live near water. So as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't even begin to venture thinking at candidates that doesn't know. That is what's making us have good development in Dania Beach. Our beach is our most prized possession. I don't see this with people that live on the inner parts of the United States. They could care less. And that's exactly how I feel. And I felt really bad when I left there to see that our votes didn't count, because the majority of the people in that room, Bill, you can attest to it, do not live near a beach. They don't care about the beach. Only the cities that are Dania Beach, Deerfield Beach, Palm Beach, give a darn about what our mayor brought up, that is about rising surf. It's just not there. And do they have experience with one of the most important issues? None. Sorry, but I'm from New Jersey and I talk kind of strong.
That's okay, Commissioner. It's just fine. I'm sorry.
No,
Go
he
ahead.
has another comment when you finish.
Just,
Go ahead.
it's really not a comment. As I've also been looking through here, and Mary, you brought the point up, but just when you said something about the population, which catches my ear. You know, some of these applicants are coming from, whether it's inner the United States, the inner states, or coastal or whatever. I'd see the range of pricing of their salaries.
Yes.
And here we are, some of these cities they come from might have even as an assistant manager, might be at 150,000 people, and they're making $200,000 a year. Why would they take less money to come work for a 33,000 populated city?
true.
That kind of,
That was the first applicant that we were saying that's chasing money, and then he's chasing money, and we're going to offer him less. It's
Yeah,
very,
well, I mean, even like I'm already up just to the fourth one, so I know we're almost done. I look
Sure.
at the 189,000 local candidate from Miramar, which I like because I see there's very little transition, already, just saying things that, I mean, he hasn't transported a lot, been working hard in the local community, but he's $189,000. Maybe I like him, but he's making $189,000. Are we offering that? That's something we haven't even discussed.
I have one more question. Mayor.
okay.
Are you going to verify that all of these 5 that you gave us, are you standing there and saying none of them were fired from a job? I want an answer to that.
Yes, I'm trying to think of the ones that I've actually
I want
recommended.
you to take your time
Sure.
and think carefully on
Sure.
that answer.
Sure.
I sound like a judge, but
No, it's
that's
okay. It's okay.
something that was brought to my attention elsewhere, that there is a candidate that was fired from a job on this. And if so, that's okay. People get fired, but I want
Sure.
to know why.
Sure.
Just looks like it is.
And I'm trying to think which one.
Because they talk like me?
I think I heard the first candidate, no, you're good, may have gotten fired. I'm not sure.
I'm going to go back through, because what I asked them, so you know, Commissioner, is what positions have you held, what your roles and responsibilities were at each position, and what were the circumstances surrounding your transition from one place to the next up to present day?
So you just asked them if they transitioned, but
No,
they
what
don't
were
have
the
to put down that they
circumstances?
were fired, right?
No, the question is, what were the circumstances surrounding their transition? So what I'm asking them is whether they were pushed out, whether they were forced out. And I'm looking here back at our first candidate, because he's first. And he took a promotional opportunity in Georgia. Wanted to come back to Florida, took the job in Opelika, served there as Planning and Community Development Director. Left Opelika to be a city manager, to learn a full-service city, learned operations, got exposure that he didn't have before, and now is in Bell. So that is how his transition was explained to me. But to answer your question, I will be verifying everything about these folks. We haven't done background checks yet. We haven't done reference checks on them. We're going to verify them to the nth degree. We still have some work to do on candidates. At this point, what we've done is we've reviewed their resumes, we've reached out to them, we found out some general information about why they're interested in coming here, what experience do they have that they bring to the table that would be valuable to Dania Beach. So that's where we are in the process.
Okay.
And I want to make a clarification. I would categorize him as chasing the money in Bell, California. I'm just saying to go in behind the mess that was there, they had to pay someone a bunch of money. So they obviously recognized some skill sets that he had to go in and clean that up, and they paid him well to do that, and he was successful in doing that. He's gotten that city back on good footing.
Okay.
Mr. Moore, Michael Moore, he is currently the Assistant City Manager, City of Miramar. He's been in that role since 2014. Prior to that, he worked for Miami-Dade County. As you can see, he worked up through the organization as Public Works Supervisor, Facilities Superintendent, Road and Bridge Superintendent, became Manager of Contracts and Specs, and then Assistant Director for that department. He is currently at $189,000 because that's been mentioned. I'm going to tell you what conversation I had with him about that. Again, I ask candidates, I cannot ask candidates anymore, how much money do you make now? I used to be able to do that. It's not doable anymore. That said, what I do is say, can you help me understand either your salary history or where you need to be to consider a change? And his comment to me was that he's currently at $189,000, but that he is flexible relative to salary because this would be a city manager position for him. When I say flexible, I don't think he's going to come in for $100,000. Let me make that clear. But there's a recognition that there's opportunity for him. So I wanted to just make sure that he is. I think he's being very selective about opportunities. I haven't seen his resume across my desk every month or every other year, and I think he recognizes what a true opportunity it is here in Dania Beach as a city manager. He talked about some similarities as far as the form of government and the size, and I think it's about 140,000 residents there. They have historic, they have new development going on in the communities. It's a very diverse organization, and he kind of talked me through some of the struggles that they're having there. They are doing a lot of CDBG and SHIP monies, which is related to grants and a lot of money for public safety. He sort of talked about the diversity of the community and the challenges that go with that. With regard to him, he just emphasized more than once to me that he's results-oriented. And I think that's important to point out. You ultimately need results. And I think that comes from his previous experience coming up through the Miami-Dade organization. Short and long-term career goals, he would like to work several more years. He's not jumping around. He pointed out that he's only been with 2 organizations his entire life, and that he's looking for a place that he could go and land and stay for 10 plus years. There's no roadblocks to him accepting the position if it were. But he just recognized this as a great opportunity. He asked about residency and said, because of that, it might take him a little bit longer to transition because he's got to sell a house, got to do what he's got to do in order to be a resident in Dania Beach. But I felt like he was real transparent, down to earth, just easy to talk to, and I think he runs a good shop in general. And again, I go back to his previous experience, just coming up through the ranks. So I think he would be the kind of manager that would come in, that would, be able to work well with you. He's in that environment now. He often presents to commission there. But he would also be able to look at the organization overall and figure out, if there's ways to streamline things or to improve things. He did tell me that when I asked if there was anything in his background, and so, I'm very specific about that when I ask. He said that in his previous role in Miami-Dade, there was an EEOC complaint, which is not that unusual. It did pertain to a termination. And then the same in Miramar. He had terminated someone there, and they filed a discrimination, whatever, and it was reviewed and assessed and all that it needs to do through the right channels, because that's what I listen for, is what did you do with that? How did you handle that? So outside of that, I think he brings a kind of a program where it's A lot of private sector industries use it. And it's about taking your management and elevating them and grooming them, and there's a progression through it for different belt colors and things like that. But he does have that experience. So that tells me he's strategic, and that he has been involved in continuing education, which is really important in this role too.
Commissioner Grace?
So when I look at this application, it reminds me of some of the things that happened to me in the past when I applied for promotions with Bell South, and one of the things that you've got too much experience, you're overqualified, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at this application, this gentleman has been very consistent with what he does for a number of years in the same location and departments. But I also looked at his management style for public works and waste management, and it says responsible for the annual operation budget of 51 mil, all disposable related financial reporting, planning, budgeting, expenditures, and all supporting non-financial data reporting and regulations compliance. So you know that Dania Beach has a history of how we handle our water. We buy water from Hollywood. We're also in partnership with the county commission. Yes. So is he under the understanding that we have different entities that we have to work with?
Yes, we talked about that. And you know, I again think some of his strengths come from having that background, and elevating up through that organization to a leadership role, and being able to transition to assistant city manager role. So I think that was one of the things. You know, I told you that I looked primarily for economic development from folks. With him, it was more that public works background and the challenges that you're having that I felt that's why he was worth talking to also.
One of the other things I'm looking at is it prepares studies and special reports for permits and liaisons and regulation agencies, consultants, and contractors. So he is not afraid to get his hands dirty and getting in there and being a team player when it comes to stuff like this.
Yes, ma'am, and I think that's leads to my comment about him being very approachable, very transparent, and down to earth. He understands management from the senior level, but he got there through the ranks, and so he can relate. He can understand the challenges with the workforce, and which I think is important too.
Okay.
Commissioner Brandon Marty?
Yeah, Renee, those two complaints, who came out the winner? The city, or, I mean, the employee, or who, that were terminated in the two cases?
In Miramar, the
Yes.
city, the right channels investigated it and found no cause for it. So I guess that equates to the city came out in the
And
right.
the second one?
The one in Miami-Dade, it has never, according to him, it's 4 years running, and it still hasn't been looked at. It's
But it
sort-
hasn't been thrown out or settled either?
No. His take on that is after 4 years, he doesn't know what to expect. I mean, why hasn't it been looked at yet?
So if we hired him and it was looked at, he'd have to take time off to go there for depots and all, right?
I think all of that has already been done at this point. It was done years ago. It's just, his hands are kind of tied with regard to that. I mean, if they are not investigating, they're not. He said that the channels within the organization looked at it and said there was nothing there. And then it was appealed, and that's where it's just been sitting for 4 years. And he said there's no
But there is
movement
the
on it.
possibility when it's brought up again that he'd have to still go back.
I can't predict that, but I guess that's
Yeah.
always a possibility.
And this man is from Miami?
Um,
Miramar, is this the, I thought, why
He
does it say
currently
that?
lives, his current address is in Miami, yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought, okay.
Both cases, were they similar?
No, well, they were both terminations, as I understand it. But they weren't for the same reason, as I understand it.
Okay.
These are, just so you know, these are not unusual. EEOC complaints are not unusual, especially where there's a termination.
I know, but you still gotta pay retroactive if you lose.
Yes, and what I look for is to see how many there are. You know, if we've got 10, we got a problem,
You ain't kidding, because he's happy.
right? And then I look to see if they went through the right channels or not. Did they handle it properly? Which in this case he did. And then I look to see, well, what's the outcome, you know, and that's what I've reported to you. The one up in Miramar was found, it was unfounded. And even the one, as I understand it, in Miami-Dade, was the internal group that looked at it said it was unfounded. And then the appeal was made, and then it just hasn't gone anywhere.
I gotta ask you one last question, I'm
Sure.
sorry. Was it an employee of the workforce, or was it, say, a department head? I mean,
As I understand,
management, huh?
One of them was the secretary, I believe.
in Miramar, it was
I use Google.
executive assistant in Miramar. I hesitate to, because I did not get down into the weeds. I just made sure that I understood what was going on in the status of those, and so I could report that to you.
I just get nosy because
Yeah,
I'm
no,
so
that's good.
employee
Yeah.
of the lesser titles
it-
oriented. I
it-
really am, because
it-
I'm a union person.
Yes,
I'll
it's
speak on it
it's
after
my
he goes.
understanding, it was employee and not a department director, but don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure.
Vice Mayor?
What I see under his list of accomplishments, which I think is pretty stellar, is the fact that he analyzed the credit card processing policy to have the fees passed back to the person using the credit card rather than the city absorbing the fees for the transactions through the banking system, which I think is pretty, you know, it's significant. And he saved the city $300,000 a year. And then consolidating the cell phone service, and then we were just talking about this last night, reduce the P-card assignments and fuel key assignments to supervisors and above, increasing accountability. So those are pretty significant right there. That he has enough experience in finance to, you know, be able to, especially with the credit card fees, to charge it back to the customer that used the credit card rather than us absorbing the fee. I think that's pretty innovative.
I think J. Michael Moore is very smart. I was very impressed with his resume and his accomplishments. As the Vice Mayor was stating, my concerns are, in fact, I Googled each of these, and a lot of them don't currently have social media because they cut those things off when they're applying for jobs. But the local ones, I was able to snoop around locally because we know people. And what I did find out about him, I don't know how factual it is, I will say that. But one of the lawsuits was that his secretary was having an affair with the attorney, and he ended up terminating her, and so and hired someone else that did not have the minimum requirements, is what I read. And I'm not sure how factual it was. I'm sure you said it is. I'm sure if it's internal investigation, depending on who's the internal source, of course it can all go away and you can win. Of course, if a city is going to back a manager or a director, they have way more money to fight this fight than a secretary. So that might be why it's been in appeals for 4 years. Yep. What I will say is we've had enough drama in the city of Dania Beach over the years where I don't know enough about that portion of it, and I'm not saying that disqualifies this person because he's very, very smart and knowledgeable. I'm speaking on, I asked about the temperaments of these individuals. I have not heard great things about his temperament, but different people bring out different things in people. Yeah. So he can be with a group that brings out the best in him, and we never see that. But you just never know. But I just wanted to speak on the things that I did find while I was, women are investigators.
Mayor, those are all good points. And there's nothing that we're talking about here today that if you bring a candidate in to interview, there's nothing that we shouldn't ask them. Sitting at the table, this is what is out there, this is what is said, explain it to me. And you're all very good readers of people, and, either it's going to be to your satisfaction or it's not. But I would not bring someone in and not ask them, because after an interview, you've got to feel comfortable
Yes.
Correct.
that you want to move that person to the
Absolutely.
next round. And I do want to remind you that these interviews on the 25th, it's a first look, it's an introduction. It's a chance to ask the hard questions, maybe throw them a couple of softballs, probably not. But, really, all of any concerns that's being expressed here to be aired out in that interview process. That's what it's for. And when you walk away from that table, if you're not satisfied with it, then that needs to be vocalized when we do our debriefing. That and you may come up and say, okay, I get what you're saying. I understand the challenges of that situation and that you navigated as best as you could. But I'm going to need some kind of documentation that supports that. I'm going to need to see something from an attorney, from this, from that, to make sure that we're not stepping into something that's going to cost us down the road without removing someone for consideration. So it's a very good point, Mayor.
Absolutely, especially we are not only rebranding, but we are, trying to,
Right.
rebuild our city, and we're just trying to do things in a more positive and progressive way than to staying with the old, same old, people getting reported, people doing the evil things that they do, even still till today. So, we just have to let miserable people be miserable, and we have to keep the fight
Yes.
alive. Vice Mayor?
Go
I
ahead.
mean, full, as you know,
Yes.
to the city attorney, because I think we were instructed that if we knew of anyone that was interested in the job, that we should send it
Yes.
on to you. And I have to tell you also, through the vice mayor of Coral Springs, I even checked you out. So, and the work that you do and you have done for other cities. So, full transparency that,
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I believe, on recollection here, I believe he had already applied by the time I had received it from the city or whatever. But that was the directive for things to come through.
and then through the Broward League of Cities, I mean, there's a lot of interaction between
Right.
other elected officials. So
Right.
it's good when you get a referral from somebody who is in an executive position that can refer someone.
Okay.
And I feel the opposite. Sorry, of course I do.
Because that's
They
inside.
feel like they have an in, that's why they
Inside
come to
straight.
me. Come on.
I do see that a lot.
That's right, that's the one, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? That's not a good thing. If he was smart, the League of Cities, they wouldn't have sent you anything.
The good news is that you hired me, and I'm very objective. It's okay, Commissioner. I wouldn't care if all of you sent me a resume. If I didn't think they were qualified, I wouldn't recommend them.
Because now I know I wouldn't vote for him. In fact, you and I, when we had that discussion in your office, you yourself said you don't want any of us to give an opinion. This was an opinion, and that's why I don't like this.
So, just so you
All
know,
right? I just want you to know, I don't like this at all.
Sure. Commissioner, just so you know, there was not a recommendation that came with that. It was simply, there's an application that's come to me, and I forwarded it to the city attorney's office, and here it is, and that was
The
it.
recommendation came when it came out of my vice mayor's mouth. Okay? That's the way I take it. And even though we love each other up here, she takes care of us good. The thing is this, that's what sets you up for a no. Because if she likes somebody, sorry, baby, and I don't, I ain't gonna vote for that person. If he likes somebody and he likes somebody, you're gonna have 3 no's. That's why there's gotta be a better way to do this. There has to. Because I'm not gonna go along with a vote because the League of Cities, who by the way don't give us much, we pay them, no offense there. The League of Cities sent something to my vice mayor, know this down. He's not getting my vote.
Commissioner, so you know, I want to make it very clear that I have not given any preferential treatment to anyone based on
I know
anything.
you haven't.
I looked at this guy solely on his merit, and I said, I think he's worth talking to.
The next.
In
did the right thing, but
Yes.
they're not.
It's just her opinion. It's a difference of opinions, and that's what happens. They can move on. Yeah, it's just, you're not at fault at anything. You're not at fault. Just, no one's at fault. Let's just move on along.
All right. Any other questions on Mr. Moore?
Nah.
Mr. Blaine Oborn, he's probably, I've never worked with him before. I was on the fence about him. I liked his education, Public Policy Administration, Cal State University, Sacramento, Business Administration, Cal State University, Sacramento. What I found interesting about this guy is, he came through finance, accounting grants manager, fiscal analyst, finance director, accounting supervisor, budget manager for SACTO Regional Transit. And then he decided in his career around 2005, he wanted to be a city administrator. And so he put it out there and got a job in West Virginia. And for somebody to go from California to West Virginia and acclimate, it speaks to a certain skill level of being able to acclimate probably anywhere. I found he had an extremely good sense of humor, very down to earth. He worked up through some larger cities, if you will. And I don't know if any of you know or have been to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, but it's sort of the cream of the crop in Wisconsin. It's a very well-to-do resort community, and I appreciated that they saw something in this guy and brought them in there. He's looking to make a change now. They're not running him out of town. He's now become an empty nester, so he basically sat down with his partner and said, what do we want to do next? Things in Lake Geneva are running relatively smooth, some challenges, but he said his goal is to be in a larger community with more opportunities. He's moved around some. It's been great. He's gained a lot of diversity of experience, but he's looking to go somewhere and stay there. So I think probably, you can tell even by his salary, he's probably managed in some of the smaller organizations compared to our other candidates. I would say he's a bit of an outlier as far as a recommendation, but he did talk about, he's done a lot with TIFs, a lot of complex things, a lot of economic development in the roles that he's had, was taxable income, and that they basically had to build a TIF from that in order to get anything done. So he's been very involved in TIFs and creating revenue streams and all of that. I think his style would fit here. I don't think he's our strongest candidate by any means, but I did feel like he was certainly worth talking with you about. See if there's anything else I can tell you. I think that's about it. There's nothing in the background.
Commissioner Grace?
So far, out of all the candidates that we've talked about, this is the weakest for me, and this is just my own opinion. I felt this way when I read everything about him. The only thing that really stood out with this candidate was that he was a Boy Scout leader. And of course, I was assistant Boy Scouts leader, so I could relate to that, And but I know that Wisconsin is cheese and dairy, and there's not much to talk about beach and the Sunshine State, so I just kind of put this one on the back burner a little bit.
The only thing that stood out to me is that it's a resort city and they have local beaches. And so when I'm talking about people that have coastal communities, this is someone that is there. However, I don't know if that translates to the same type of coastal community that we have. I don't know if their beaches freeze over in the winter. I'm not sure if it becomes a frozen place for you to go ice skating on, or I just don't know if they have the same challenges as we have. A resort city, I would love to be in charge of a resort city. It's like being on vacation, but this is far from a vacation. This is a job that you absolutely have to grab the bull by the horns and deal with a lot more. I could not find the population for a city of Lake Geneva. No, I ain't gonna be able to do it. Yeah. No, we're seasonal, but seasonal in a larger way, a way larger way than 8,000. I mean, we're growing in the next 5 years by 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people maybe. And so, yeah, I do appreciate it because everyone deserves at least an opportunity. So I can appreciate that you put someone in there that, you know, you may feel like you saw something in them, but I think the consensus might be that you saw something in them. Commissioner Brandon Marty?
Yeah, see, now here's what stuck out.
Oh, put your thing on.
Here's what stuck out for me. He's involved in cemeteries. That's pretty good. Boat landing, beach, boat slips, buoy rentals, police with 24 officers, and a volunteer part-time fire and EMS.
Part-time.
Part-time. Well, he was the closest one to water anyway.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, Commissioner Salvino?
I probably won't be the most popular person after I say this, so
Oh, you will.
listening to all of us up here, and I think Commissioner Brandon already hit it the nail on the head. You're going to have 2 here, 3 here, back and forth, and going ahead and talking about our feeling of the 5 candidates that you've chosen for us. And I don't think we're going to have a 5-0 vote on this the way it looks. I may not even have a 4-1 vote the way it looks. And everything you've described up here and everything that we've talked about, the people with the knowledge and the people that have the beach expertise and the budgeting expertise, we've got them sitting in there as our assistant manager, which I think is there. I mean, I know that they may not like it. Someone may not like them, but I mean, right now, I haven't seen anything any better.
Caliber ain't the same as what we got now. Isn't
I
it
beg to
equal?
differ.
Pardon me?
I said, well, I beg to differ.
Well, I know,
mean,
that's what I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
not gonna be the most popular
Well, I
person when I
don't-
say that, but,
Yeah, me
I mean,
too.
right now, it hasn't struck me as anything better than what we have. So, I mean, that's your opinion, but
You don't think that any of these candidates is better than what we currently have?
Oh, heck no.
Oh.
no.
Sorry.
Commissioner Grace?
There's only one candidate that really stands out for me, and of course, we will probably talk a little bit more about that in detail when we start working on it on Monday as we go through them. But I would like to go outside the box right now, and I don't know whether this is permissible or not, but I want to be transparent. And I would really like to, at this point, add 2 names to be considered. That would be Colin Donnelly and Brad Kane.
I think that's smart. I think they should have an opportunity.
Oh, that's why she's not talking. There's no mic.
Okay. Joe, you killed us.
Mayor, the commission can choose to add candidates. I would just point out that Mr. Donnelly did not apply for the job.
No.
So,
Colin
It
didn't
doesn't matter. We can
apply.
bring it up
Mr.
as a
Donnelly,
commission.
yes, that's correct. And you would like to do that. I do think we have a few strong candidates here. I would encourage you not to judge them based just on paper,
Yeah.
but bring them in. I certainly would say Craig Clay, Michael Moore, and Mr. Brown, Howard Brown, I think are caliber candidates, and they bring some strengths. We might not get everything we want in a particular candidate, but their job as city manager is to make sure whatever areas they're not strong in, that they supplement those areas. They hire the right people. They surround themselves with the right people to get the job done. So I certainly think that you should consider those folks. And if there are anyone else that you would like to add, the list is in the back of the book. There's about 35 people on there. No, I'm sorry, 28 people on, 39 people on there. And anyone that you would like to add to the mix, that's certainly your prerogative to do that.
So are we going to do this by consensus of who you all want to add?
I need to ask a question, if you don't mind, Mayor, to the
Go
attorney?
ahead.
Since Assistant Manager Colin Donnelly did not apply, would it be apropos to put him on here, or should we
You
just?
can absolutely draft it if you wanted to, yes.
Okay, then it will stand, I would like to add him and Brad Kane.
Brad's already applied. Oh, okay. Applied. To the what people, the people to be interviewed?
To be interviewed on Monday.
Okay, that's,
Don't we all have to agree?
Yeah, it's up to you guys.
Oh, you have to have at least 4 people to agree to it?
at least three.
Yeah, that's what I mean. At least 4. And
Yeah, we're not voting at our workshop. It's a
Right.
consensus.
Just,
So it's a
just to give them a
consensus.
consideration and a courtesy.
I mean, as far as Brad, who applied, because he was the only internal person, whoever was internal that applied, I would have wanted to give them the consideration just to be interviewed, because we promote, promotions from within and trying to grow with a company. And so I think he does meet the minimum qualifications. He hasn't been a city manager, but I think he's better than some of these candidates,
Okay.
in my opinion. As far as Colin, I don't even know if he wants to even be considered for the job or apply. Both times
He doesn't
he's.
have to show up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't want to give someone consideration that didn't even show any type of
Then I
interest
will
in the
withdraw that
position.
and just add the name Brad Kane.
I mean, if he showed interest, I mean, it's up to you if you want, but it's just my opinion. If someone didn't even show interest in the position 2 times that we opened this up, I would find it very hard for me to even feel like they will want to be here. Not that they're not qualified, because he's qualified, but that he will even want to do this job. I mean, I know he's gone on other interviews, other places, and he hasn't even put in an application here. So that's just my opinion.
Well taken.
Okay, so what do we need, Mayor, if we want to?
Do we have a consensus?
Brad doesn't need.
But he
to be
needs a
requested.
consensus
All right, so
to-
I'd like to ask the commission to get 3 votes and give Colin an opportunity since he is a city employee. And
He
that,
automatically has it if the manager was gone anyway.
so I'm just asking you, since you're talking about hiring within, whether he put an application or not, if Bob left tomorrow, he is our city manager. So I don't think that whether he put an application or not, if he decides not to show up, I think he should have that opportunity. I'm asking the commission to give him an opportunity. From what I see here, I'm okay with giving him an opportunity. If he doesn't want to show up, then he's made his point. I mean, it can't hurt.
Well, look, let's face it, if Bob Baldwin left tomorrow, or he left next month, Colin Donnelly automatically is our acting city manager.
True.
What did we hire this young, beautiful lady for, if this is the route that you're going?
It's not the route that I'm going. I said that he didn't even want it.
Because if it came down to it, Colin would be our acting manager, not Public Works Department, but the assistant manager to the manager.
All right, so either we need 3 votes, give him an opportunity to be asked. If he doesn't want to come, he doesn't come.
I agree with you on that.
You know, it's up to him. I mean, right now, there's an opportunity, maybe he has a second consideration, maybe he doesn't, I
Right,
don't
I'm
know.
not just gonna give the opportunity to Brad, I'm not a vote for that.
Well, I think Brad should have an opportunity. He's already on the list.
Well, with somebody else, sure,
He's
I'm
on the
not
list.
against that.
Please put both of them on the list. If anybody else objects to that, please say it. At least 3. So, okay, that's 3. Chicky and Marco and me. I'll say it.
What'd you do?
Me too.
We're all unanimously going to give both of them an opportunity. If they show up, they show up. If they
If he
don't, they
chooses,
don't.
Or they choose.
Okay. With regard to the candidates that were recommended, do we have a consensus to move any of those candidates forward?
Blaine, over, and I want to remove him. I'm not sure if
Okay.
anyone
I agree.
else
Okay.
feels that way. The last one.
The last
that's
one.
Okay.
On vacation. Anyone else want to remove him?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Because we need a consensus.
So we're
Just
with
asking.
6 candidates now. Am I right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read their names out just to make sure we're clear. Howard Brown is moving forward from East Peoria.
I would like to remove him. I mean, I just don't know if he'll honestly get 4 votes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. He was the one with the early retirement advocacy. This is
Yeah,
someone that has been
I'm
in,
kind of leaning toward that one too.
the one that has never been
The
in a,
early
he's in
retirement, 15 and
Indiana,
15.
Illinois.
Early retirement, public
Eber,
works. and-
E-B-E-R.
Jeffrey Eder.
Eber, yes, sir.
I'm gonna listen
I just
to
don't want to waste any of our time
Sure.
or theirs.
So I'm going to
Because they'll
recap.
have to fly down here.
I'm going to recap, just so I make sure I understand.
Wait, I want to make sure that we have a consensus of
Okay.
that first before you remove them. So we have two people
Those
that's,
are the two.
those are the two.
Support him. It's-
I'm not ready to remove him yet. I'd like to at least listen to him. That's my opinion.
Okay.
I
Anyone
want
else?
them removed. and-
Vice Mayor and Commissioner Brandon Marty?
I know
What's
he's
your
out of
opinion?
state, but I'd like to at least give him the courtesy to listen what he's got to say.
Jeffrey
For the
Eder.
noise, for-
From where your dad, from,
Oh, from where my father's from. Yeah, give him a break. It's a lousy place to live anyway.
That's what you're basing it on?
That's the only thing I'm basing on.
Well, no, don't base it on that. Base it on if you think, because,
You gotta go to Peoria first this weekend. I'll pay for all our trips.
Lord
Leave in a
Jesus.
heartbeat. So bad you wanna go move somewhere else too.
Okay, so I guess keep him.
That's
so
fine.
that's six. That's six
That's
people.
enough.
That's good.
Okay, so I'm going to read them in alphabetical order. Clay, I'm sorry, Brown,
Yep.
Clay,
Eder. Oh,
Donnelly,
no, Kane comes before Don, no, that's K.
Donnelly, Eber,
Yep.
Kane, and Moore.
Yep.
And so we're in agreement. Now, that is six. I will communicate with Mr. Donnelly that it is the wish of the commission that he participate in this process.
Unanimous, unless she wants to say no.
Listen, you can come. I can,
It was
you can say unanimous for both of them, yep.
Sure,
to know that.
sure. I think that's important. So I will let him know, and then we'll reconvene on the 25th to have a full day of interviews. I'll work with staff to coordinate everything.
Full day. Hope they have breakfast and lunch.
I will make sure they have breakfast and lunch for you, Commissioner.
Get up until 10. This is gonna be awkward with me.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Listen, I don't want to, I disagree a little bit on something that Commissioner Brandon Marty said when, okay, that's fine. But saying like it'll always be like 3 and 2, I just want Renee to understand, I have been on the one side of some 4-1 votes and some other people have, and we all have, so I don't want to, we need a 4-1 vote for someone in this packet that we have recommended. And I don't want us to go into this saying, we're never going to get that. Because if we're going into that saying, we are wasting Ms. Narlock's time, we're wasting all of our candidates' time, and we're wasting our time. So we might not get everything that we would have wished, but this city is going to have to run. We are going to have to come together as a team and make a decision that is going to better our city. We don't have anyone that obviously that we can say could be the next president of the United States or the next governor or something like that. We have to understand that where we're going, and we have to understand that we're going to have to give someone an opportunity. We have people that were city managers, assistant city managers, different departments. It does not mean that they cannot come in here and do a great job. We've seen that with Raquel. We've seen that with other people that have been placed in positions. And so I just want us to come into on the 25th with a positive mindset on we are going to decide who our next city manager is going to be, because if we come in here with negative energy, it's going to be negative interviews, and that energy is transferable. And so it might not be everything that I want in a city manager. I'm sure we all want the stars and the skies to all align and butterflies and unicorns and rainbows. That's not, you're going to be waiting until the day we die if you're thinking, I don't know if we'll get a unanimous decision, but we definitely need to at least have a 4-1 vote on one of these candidates. Like we have to dig deep and.
We need a 4-1 or
The one is not important. You need 4 to hire.
Yes.
Okay.
We need 4 to hire. I mean, yeah, you need 4 to hire. You need 4 votes to hire. So we're going to have to come together and do this together as a team. Vice Mayor?
Agreed. The first offer will be a contract for the term of, how do you do that, Tom? 1 year?
You've typically done 1 year in the past, and
Okay.
then
With
renewable.
an option to renew.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Wow.
the thing you're going to have to be careful of, and you might want to know up front,
come
for
for
the
the
people
1
that are
year.
out of state, sometimes these people seek
Right.
their expenses, and you're going to want to know what you're involved with that.
I wouldn't want to get someone in here that only has to commit to a year.
Why would we even have a contract at a time? If we don't like it, we fire
No, it
them.
would be renewable at the city commission's option.
Oh,
You know, obviously, it's both
contract,
options, but-
If we have a contract for 4 or 5 years, that means we automatically have to pay them if we fire them?
No, as Renee alluded to, the governor had a new state law that said severance, if you give it, and typically you give it, is a maximum of
20 weeks.
20 weeks, 2.5 months. No, more than that, 5 months.
Consider moving his wife, his children out of schools, and all of that for 1 year,
They wouldn't.
and not feel like.
They wouldn't.
Thank you, girl.
They wouldn't.
And think about this, the husband may even have to give up his job if it was a woman.
The risk,
Why the heck would I come here for 1 year knowing that we got an election coming up
Right, they
in,
wouldn't. I
in
wouldn't.
his 1 year's time, and we could just as well dump him or her.
Right. No,
Why only 1 year?
I wouldn't.
well,
Can we?
again, the
can we
risk for the
change-
commission is having somebody you're not happy with, no matter where they came from.
You can't get rid of them.
Unless you have to terminate.
Well-
If you terminate for convenience,
Yeah.
which you can do, you're going to end up giving at least 5 months of severance.
No, he ain't getting it.
I mean, you
Well, I
don't-
mean,
you don't
we're
have-
elected and
you don't
everyone
have to
doesn't like
agree to-
us.
you don't
Doesn't
have
mean
to
that
agree
they're
to
not
that, but that's the
qualified to
maximum
do the
you can give.
job.
You can't give more than that.
I mean, I just know that even if we don't like the person when they come in, like, we're elected, everyone doesn't like us. You know, I get hate mail all the time. And so it doesn't matter. If you're still qualified to do the job and you are doing the job, if it's something that they're not doing, it's a different stipulation. The next question I want to ask the commission is, how much are we willing to pay a new city manager?
Well, not more than what he's asking for, like we did with our CRA.
We gave her more than what she asked for.
That's what I said.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, you
we'll-
may.
We'll get to a point where these items, we need to delve into them and get clarification on them. Most of these things are negotiable. And if we're going to talk about salary, what I would suggest we do is talk about a range.
Uh-huh.
And also, just know that where they start within that range depends on the qualifications, because you don't want to lock yourself in right now. A candidate that comes in here and all of a sudden you really like them and you've already said we're not paying more than this, and you're thinking, no, it'd be worth the money to get this person. So we don't want to back ourselves in a corner just yet on
Okay.
salary.
What's the range of our city manager now?
140, something like that.
What are we paying Mr. Baldwin?
I think it's 160 and around that neighborhood.
I think so.
Well, there's one guy that-
Right, don't give her a hat first.
Oh,
I just want us to have, I just want us to think about these things when we're coming into the next meeting.
yeah, so I can make the range.
Mhm.
Mayor, also, the other thing that I will ask for is not only a range from which, within which the person can negotiate, but we'll need and be thinking about this, we'll need a point person for negotiations when we get there.
I'll negotiate.
Commissioner Salvino has offered, but I'm thinking, and I don't mean to put the city attorney on the spot, but
I've typically have done it at the
That's-
direction of the commission.
that's the person
I go
that
to
I-
all 5 commissioners, get their take, and then find out from them what they want.
So we
but
still
not to
have,
exceed.
we still have a lot of ground to cover in this whole process of getting a agreement in place, of negotiating those elements of that agreement. So we're just at the beginning. I still have to do background checks. I still have to do references. We're in a process. I know it seems like it's taken a while, but we'll get there. Our next step is to sit down with these folks and hash it out with them at the interview table on the 25th. I need you to make sure that ahead of time you write down whatever concerns you had, all
All the
candidates.
candidates.
I know that seems restrictive, but they're a good set of questions, and they're open-ended. So every question is designed to get at the heart of a matter, whether it's negotiation skills or budgeting skills or economic development or affordable or beach renourishment, whatever. These questions are all designed to hit that mark. So at the end of the day, we can compare apples to apples. And that's just a first run for us. It's introductory interview. I do want to make sure that when those interviews are done and the candidate walks away, you have all your questions answered at that point, because then you have to make a decision. What I suspect will happen is you'll probably have one, maybe two candidates that you take a liking to, and you'll say, let's bring those two back and let's vet them further. I would also like to say that I've talking with some of the commissioners, I had suggested one-on-ones, the group interviews on the 25th, and then one-on-ones the morning of the 26th. I've heard from a couple of commissioners that that is not a preference right now for this first round of interviews, that there are several challenges with that. It's impropriety or appearance of being, not being transparent.
transparent.
I don't like it.
And what have you. So what I'm going to suggest is that this next round, we just do the group interviews on the 25th. Level playing field, everybody asks the same questions, and then at the end of that day, we get a consensus of who of that group you want to move forward, and then we design that, and we say, okay, the next round will be, we want these people to come in and meet the department directors, or we want these people to come in and do an informal meet and greet with community. I'm not saying we're going to do any of that. I'm just saying we'll craft that as we go. And if any of you choose at that time that you want one-on-one time with the candidates, 20 minutes or whatever, that'll be a choice you make. I don't want to do that on the front end, though. I want everything level. You mentioned, Mayor, that getting a 4-1 is imperative here. I will tell you that, and I may become unpopular right now, but I will tell you that no matter how your vote lands, I will circle back around and ask you to do a 5-0 when we get to the final, because it's just a good faith effort to put that forward for anybody coming in, and you can do it or you cannot do it, but I will ask you to do that. What I believe is going to happen is when we get down to our final two, what ultimately happens is you have one or two people that you are all in agreement can do the job and do it well. So whether it's your first pick or your second pick, you're still in a position that you feel comfortable with that. So I think that's it for my.
Renee, are you going to give them questions that they may not ask under federal and state law?
Yes, I will be here for the interviews, and part of my orientation will be to share with you all the things you cannot ask, and I'll be in the room. It's everything from, gender, sex, race, age, sexual orientation. The list is long, and I will go through. You cannot ask any questions or follow-up questions relative to any of that information. Now, I know it's challenging because you're hiring a person and you want to know something about them, but you cannot ask if they have a good interview, they'll offer that information at the end. They'll say, by the way, personally, this is who I am and this is what I like to do, but you cannot ask certain questions. So I'll be in the room. If you go down that road, I'll throw the flag and get you back on track. But the questions will be very comprehensive. I'll also kind of give you the layout of what we're doing that day, what to expect, the schedule, and keep everything on schedule. I'll help to facilitate everything, including some rating sheets and ranking sheets. So it causes you to look at them and look at them for things like, did they prepare for the interview? What are their communication skills? Are they approachable? All of these soft skills, I call them, that you need to pay attention to in the interviews
Absolutely.
and see how they fare. But there'll be rating sheets in there for that, as well as a ranking sheet at the end where you can keep your top pick kind of at the front of your list all day long. So that's what helps us to get a consensus. At the end of the day, I ask you what that ranking looks like, and oftentimes we have consensus when we get down to the ranking. So I know you're a little bit worried about everybody agreeing on the same person or persons, but we will get there. We will get there. We've just got to make our step.
Hold on, Commissioner Grace?
I just want to thank you for all your time and energy. I know it
Absolutely.
was a very difficult job for you with that many applicants. I'm not disappointed that I didn't see anyone that gave me has asked you tough questions, and I'm sure that we will ask the candidates the same tough questions within reason. And I think that at the end of the day, when we pick someone, that he will be able, or she will be able to come in and sit with the city manager now, that will get us through where we need to get, and will be on board by the end of November. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Commissioner Grace.
We have a question. You have a question you want to come up and ask your question, Patty?
She's going to tell us.
Pat Chuckerman. Could you state your name and address for the record?
Pat Chuckerman, 545 Southeast 4th Court. So you all know me. You all know how I feel about the city. I don't want to disseminate false information, but I am under the understanding that one of the candidates is involved in a lawsuit with the city of Dania Beach, which in my mind
Yep.
should disqualify that person.
Could you disclose that information, which candidate? I mean,
Brad Kane.
Yes,
He-
because of
he-
Sherry.
Oh,
He's not named in the
oh,
lawsuit.
we know that.
Excuse me?
He's a witness in the lawsuit, he will be, but he's not named it. The city and Sherry are in a lawsuit. She's seeking whatever her damages for, you know, the way she claims she's been treated, but he's not named in it.
That one we checked.
Oh, yeah, we know about that one. We didn't know.
Okay.
about that.
He would not be.
I thought you were talking
But
He
it's
would
been
not be
brought
personally
to our
responsible.
attention
Okay,
because we
I
already know.
I just wanted to
We
be
know.
sure, because, you know, that,
we
I
know.
think that would probably disqualify him as a candidate.
What disqualifies him?
The fact that
If
he's
he was
involved.
involved, what I heard was that she was suing him for harassment.
No.
She's not suing him.
No,
Okay, okay,
Suing us.
No. She's not suing.
Okay.
Go ahead.
she is not suing him for harassment.
okay.
Suing us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just have
Yeah,
one more
that's what
question. You know, in this format here, where we're up here, what, is this the format that you usually do interviews in? Or if we were in the Northwest Conference Room where we're all at the same level on the playing field, does that seem more compatible for a friendlier interview than a,
I think
what do you think about that?
I think that's a little more personal and, you know, get to sit across a table and look them eye to eye, and whatever you choose is fine. I mean, they're gonna stand at this podium 1,000 times, so whether it's here or somewhere else. But we do need to make sure, of course, that it's public noticed meeting there and have, you know,
I
ample
don't know.
room for
It
that.
depends on how many people show up to that. That's what the only thing
I
that
like
you
the
need to.
setting that we have because when we did the CRA director, it worked out great. You stepped out into the hall, we interviewed one person, we brought the other person in. I think
And these
this is
seats
the
are way more
setting.
comfortable for you all to be all
Right here.
day long.
Right here.
I will say, Vice Mayor, when I've done other city manager searches recently, the initial interview was here in the chambers. It wasn't in
Right here.
chambers.
In corporate world, for me in the past, when we had a major interview with a candidate, we did it off premises. So we would, you know, like book a conference room at the hotel across the street or at the Morrison and just do the setup there.
Sure.
And, you know, then they would provide us breakfast and lunch.
I'll work very hard on getting that for you.
But for that's the first round, the public part, but I don't know, just a thought.
Okay.
Good point.
Again, I just want to make sure that we understand that people are different in person than on paper. And that is
They
very
are.
hard to judge people. When you're just looking at a sheet of paper, sometimes you can't really read between the lines, and you can't interpret certain sentences or certain things. Really don't highlight who a person really is. A person could come in here and just wow us off of an interview, and we hadn't even read anything about them, and they might not have an impressive resume. And so I just want us to keep that in mind when we're going. And if y'all have anything else.
If I may, this could be a
Hold
clarification.
on one second. City Attorney wants to say something to us.
Okay. I know Ms. Brandon already mentioned, I heard you say it, the fellow Mr. Moore, with the EEOC and the secretary and an attorney. I'm familiar with that background. I just want you to know, the secretary and the attorney were both disciplined. The attorney was from my old law firm. The lawyer also left the firm. I don't know the background, but he's not with the firm. But I think both of them, they had a relationship. They were not allowed to have a relationship, working together, and that got them in trouble.
That's not a trustworthy person. I don't give a darn.
Well, that was the lawyer
Yep.
and the secretary.
Yeah, all of them were at fault,
But
right?
it wasn't Mr.
Yeah,
Moore.
it was his secretary. He fired her.
He had jurisdiction over her. The law firm had jurisdiction over the lawyer.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. You have something else, Commissioner Gray? Your light is, okay. Thank you so much, Renee, for
welcome,
putting up
Mayor.
with us.
You're a great group. You're a great group. You
Thank
are.
you.
And I want you to know, I did sell you. I was able to do that, you know, because they want to know what they're walking into. And I said, what they're walking into is folks that are all swimming in the same direction. None of you said, oh, stop the development, we don't need it. All of you said, no, we need it, it's time, it's good, we want it. that's a big deal, because sometimes you have people that they'll run on a platform just to stop development. And so I told them, you're unified in that, and I told them you've not forgotten about your community. And, you know, they were very complimentary of what they saw in the meetings and stuff. So I just want you to know that you sold very well in general as a group.
Thank you. I'll see you
You're
all on the
welcome.
25th.
Thank you.